Hello, I'm Jacob Kruger, and this is the Write Your Screenplay podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about writing genre. We're going to be talking about writing the horror genre, of course. We're going to be talking about writing elevated horror, but we're also going to be talking about writing any kind of feature film or TV show or even play or novel that has a strong genre element. So this is whether you are writing an action movie or an action comedy or a romantic comedy or a musical, any strong genre element. And the truth is, every film has a strong genre element. Even if you're writing a little indie film, there is always a genre element. So if you think of a Wes Anderson movie, for example, the genre element is that Wes Anderson cool, hip cuteness, right? And the kind of odd characters and the really beautiful tableaus, right? That's the Wes Anderson genre. Or if you think of a writer like Charlie Kaufman, he has his own genre too, right? He's writing inside of a romantic comedy generally in his early work, but it's also going to have that mind-bending quality to it. It's going to make you laugh, and it's going to kind of bend your mind. It's going to have some darkness underneath the surface, but the darkness is going to be kind of hidden. And you can see that Charlie Kaufman's genre changed as he evolved in his career, right? Where he stopped working with Spike Jonze and the darkness kind of emerged onto the surface, right? With a film like Synecdoche, New York, or Anomalisa, where suddenly the mind-bendingness is still there, but the darkness becomes surface, and the romantic comedy elements kind of disappear. So the concept I want you to think of is that whether you like it or not, your film is in a genre. Whether you're writing a superhero movie or a little tiny indie film, whether you're writing a comedy series or whether you're writing a dramedy, every show, every movie has a genre. So what are we really talking about when we talk about genre? We're actually talking about two different elements. The first element we're talking about is the way that your movie or show makes the audience feel. Every audience goes to a movie or gets on Netflix for the exact same reason that you do. They want to feel a certain way. Perhaps they want to feel like love is possible, and they're going to show up and watch a romantic comedy because it's going to make them feel that. Or maybe they want to feel an adrenaline rush. They might show up for your action movie for that reason, or they might show up for a noir, right, or a thriller to get that kind of adrenaline rush. They might want that sci-fi experience, that feeling of other worlds that somehow comment on ours, or that fantasy experience. They might be coming for a feeling of violence and action. They might be coming for a feeling of adventure. They might be coming for a feeling of being connected and understanding. They might be coming for a feeling of being challenged creatively. But your audience is always coming for a feeling. And if you don't deliver that feeling, the audience is going to be pissed off. If you're writing BoJack Horseman and you don't deliver 500 puns a minute and then every once in a while make us cry, we're going to be pissed off. If you're writing Curb Your Enthusiasm and you don't make us laugh at the little eccentricities of neurosis of trying to get along in reasonable upper-class society, right? You haven't done your job. And if Curb Your Enthusiasm ever made you cry, you'd be angry, right? Because that's not the feeling you're coming for. So the first element that we're talking about when we talk about genre is how the movie or show makes you feel. And that doesn't mean that you should adjust the feeling of your show for your audience. And it doesn't mean that you can't do cool mashups. You certainly can. If you think of a film like Parasite, right, that really interestingly mashes up comedy and horror and political commentary, or a film like Get Out that does the same thing, right? There are a million genres, there are a million kinds of feeling, and there are a million kinds of mixes of feelings. So when you think about the feeling that your film or your show delivers, you're not talking about selling out and trying to please some unknown audience. Instead, you're thinking, what do I want to feel when I watch this? What do I want to feel when I write it? And how do I deliver that main feeling consistently? It doesn't have to be on every page, but how do I keep coming back to it, keep landing it? In a comedy, this might be joke density. Going back into each page and just cramming it filled with jokes. In a drama, this might be how many tears can I wrestle out of this, right? How many moments can I hit that really where we feel that power and pain of familial connection, for example? If you're writing a horror movie, right, it might be, if it's a kind of gross out horror, it might be, how much blood can I land? Every 7 pages or so there better be blood splattered everywhere, and I better be building tension. And if it's a campy horror, I better be building it in a campy way. And if it's an elevated horror, then it's about, how do I use horror to kind of get underneath the feelings, the real feelings, the dramatic experiences in our lives. So if you look at a film like A Quiet Place, right? A Quiet Place is really about the horror of silence within families, the horror of not being able to say, I love you. And what does that do when you cannot communicate your feelings, right? Now, that is translated through this kind of horror element. So when you're thinking about your show, your movie, start by looking at what's already there. What's it already doing really well, whether that's one feeling or a mashup of feelings? And ask yourself, how do I keep on delivering that? And more importantly, how do I keep on outdoing that? In a way, every genre is like a fireworks display on the 4th of July, right? What we want to do with each scene, each act, right? We want to be building towards a crescendo. We want to be outdoing what came before. We want to be pushing that feeling even further, or pushing that mashup of feelings even further, right? So on the simplest level, when we think about genre, you don't even need to think about elements. You can just think about feeling, and how am I delivering that feeling? Then there's another element, which is, what are the elements that convey that feeling? What are the elements that the audience wants to see? And in this way, every genre is like a musical. When we're thinking about musicals, if you understand musical, you can understand everything else about genre. So this is how writing a musical works. You come up with a story and you write a script. And of course, you're writing in collaboration with composers, but what the composers do is they take your best dramatic scenes and they steal them, and they turn them into songs. So they take the scenes that are actually the most powerful scenes in what's called the book in a musical, right? In the script, in the story. They take the scenes that are actually the most compelling and powerful scenes, and they go, no, that's not going to be a scene anymore. That is now going to be an aria. That is now going to be a song, right? And what they're really doing is they're taking that dramatic content and they're translating it into that mode. So you can think about this in the same way in your screenwriting. Underneath every genre, comedy, historical fiction, drama, political film, romantic comedy, dark comedy, elevated horror, whatever world you're working in, underneath every genre is just a drama. Underneath every genre is a story about somebody who wants something, trying to get it as best they can in the best way that they can do it. Making mistakes, falling flat, having an emotional experience. That is, every story is a drama. Every comedy is a drama. If you handle Curb Your Enthusiasm in a slightly different way, it is a really disturbing drama about a guy who just can't handle the world. If you handle, I've done a podcast on this actually, but if you handle Arrested Development in a different way, it turns into Succession. Underneath every genre is a drama, a story about characters trying as best they can to get their wants and needs met and bouncing off each other in a way that creates torture and that creates change. And then what we do is, on top of that genre, we apply tone and we apply elements. So if you're writing an action movie, don't think of your action as something that happens in between the dramatic scenes. Instead, think of your action as something that happens inside of the dramatic scenes, a way of translating the dramatic scenes. So take the scene where they are falling in love and turn it into an action sequence. If you're writing a heist movie, make it a heist sequence. If you're writing a horror movie, make it a horrifying sequence. Make it a monster in the house sequence. If you are writing a comedy, make it a funny sequence. And if you're writing a musical, make it a musical sequence. I want you to think of this idea as applying genre on top of drama, because I think it'll help you. Because what often happens is we get lost in the elements and we forget that the elements alone are not a story. You can write the most exciting, inventive action sequence ever written. If we don't have the drama underneath, it's gonna feel boring. You just can't sustain 2 hours, an hour and a half, or episode after episode. You just can't sustain it on exciting action sequences or exciting, beautiful songs or amazing costumes, right? We always need that drama underneath. It is always about the drama. So sure, if your scene happens to come to you with a genre element attached, great. Take it, run with it, do it. If it does not, look first at your best scenes and ask yourself, how could the scene take place inside the genre? How could I translate this scene into a chase scene, into a murder scene, into a fight scene, into a chase scene? How could I turn this into the genre element? Then look at that scene that you've created and ask yourself, how can I do that? How can I come back to that? How can I keep building upon that so that my script works as a crescendo of that drama genre element? So again, here's the simple concept. In your early draft, your genre may only be in certain places. You might not be getting the most out of the genre. But as you rewrite, you want to be constantly coming back to, how do I get those genre elements in? What do I want to feel? And what are the elements that are going to help me deliver this? What are the fireworks that you are coming for when you write your script? Because those are going to be the same fireworks that other people are coming for. One more thought about this is that sometimes we are wrong about our genre. I'll tell you a true story. My very first play was called The Funeral. I was in college, so I needed people to understand, number one, how serious of a writer I was, and number two, how dramatic and painful life was. And so the play was called The Funeral. It was really dark, and in the main lead, I cast the darkest, most serious actor I could find, who went on to have a really amazing career. And at the last minute, he had to drop out of the reading of the play. And I was in a panic. And so I called my friend Jay, who was a comedic actor. And I said, hey, man, I'm in so much trouble. Can you show up in an hour and read this for me? And he said, sure. But of course, he didn't have time to read the play in advance. And what Jay did was he played every line for comedy, because he assumed, what idiot would ever cast him in a dramatic role? He played every line for comedy, and he saved that play. He saved that play, and he's taught me something about tone and something about genre. You see, I thought I had written a drama, but I wasn't completely in control of my craft yet. And in fact, I had turned up the volume so high on the drama that without Jay's comedic timing, the play actually wouldn't have worked. It would have been too dark, too over the top, too much. And what Jay did, by finding all these amazing comedic riffs inside the piece, he actually allowed the audience to kind of let down their guard, to forget the play was going to hurt them, to actually cry at the end because they didn't have their defenses up against it. And I remember Jay came up to me afterwards and he apologized. He's like, I didn't know it was a drama. And I said, Jay, I didn't know it was a comedy. this guy saved my play, and he taught me something, which is sometimes the genre you think you're writing is not the piece your movie, your play, your screenplay, your TV show, your book, your comic. Sometimes it's not what it wants to be. And a lot of genre is, instead of trying to impose your will on the piece, is going like, okay, if I don't already have a producer involved, if there's not somebody already demanding this of me who's expecting specific genre elements, what does the piece want to be? What is already there? What are my best scenes? And how do I do more of that? How do I translate more of the scenes that are not already in that genre into that genre? That doesn't mean every scene needs to be in the same genre. You can find lots of different elements. You can find undertow to go along with the big wave. But every 7 pages or so, you want to make sure that you're landing that genre element that both you and your audience are coming for. You want to make sure you're giving them the shiny, fancy stuff that they want. Because if you do that, you can get away with nearly anything else. If you're writing A Quiet Place, and you manage to have really terrifying monsters, you can get away with both the kind of absurdities of that piece, like why don't they live under the waterfall? You'll be forgiven that. And you can also get away, why does the baby not cry? You'll be forgiven that. But you can also get away with telling this quiet little story about the relationship between a dad and his kids. If you give them the genre elements, you can get away with nearly everything. And again, this doesn't mean selling out. This means asking yourself, what is already great in my script? How do I push that to the extreme? How do I do more of this? If this script has tremendous tension building, how do I push it towards that thriller? If this script is about the darkness and who you can trust, how do I push it towards noir? If I already have amazing action sequences, how do I push those even further to create that crescendo? If this is horror, how do I make it more horrifying? If this is supposed to gross you out, how do I make it more gross? You want to push the genre to the furthest extent you can, but not as an add-on to the scenes, but by taking out your very best moments and pushing them through that lens. And if you do that, you will have a great time writing genre. I hope that this podcast was helpful. If you'd like to check out more, you can find a full transcript on my website, as well as a calendar of all of our upcoming classes, including our one-on-one ProTrack mentorship program that will pair you with a professional writer who will mentor you throughout your entire career at the tiniest fraction of the cost of grad school. That's writeyourscreenplay.com.